Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trade. We have Beka with us again today. Hi,
Yeah.
Beka.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It is lovely having you today again to talk about trade. I think last time we delved into a kind of a general feeling of Ethiopia, a general feeling of its history and things. But at the end there, you did tell us that Ethiopia has a number of reforms. You did share with us that Ethiopia, the ability of success will be in overcoming some of those challenges and the effective execution of these reforms and things. So today, I think it would be lovely for some of our listeners to hear more about Ethiopia's journey, Ethiopia's approach, and all of these things. So are you ready to let's talk trade with me?
Yeah, I'm excited about it, and I'm really ready to talk about. Yeah, ready. Shoot the questions, please.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk trade. Great. So let's get started. I think if we see Ethiopia, in the last discussion, you shared with us that Ethiopia has gone on this amazing evolutionary journey. And, they're on this really steep curve of a trade development trajectory that they're on. They've reformed, I think you said something like 50 reforms or something like
Yeah.
that, which is intense. And you've seen a
Yeah.
lot of changes happening in especially in the customs law, the customs administration element. Now, I have a question because back in 2018, if I remember and recall this correctly, Ethiopia was not a member of the WTO, and they had quite unique legislations at that time, very much proud about not being a member and basically having their own legislation. Where do we stand now? And are they aligning or are they already member? If we just take one, let's say, agreement at a time, let's first just talk WTO and the customs agreement. What has been Ethiopia's journey and where are they now?
Yeah. Yes, as you mentioned in our last conversation, and let's talk trade. Yeah, we've discussed and talked about the reforms, the structural reforms that is been happening in Ethiopia for the last 6, 7 years. Yes, I've mentioned that over 50 plus major proclamation been amended and repealed in order to make the structural adjustment to reflect on Ethiopia's trajectory of wanting to join the WTO, but not only the WTO, but also the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So just to answer your specific question, Ethiopia has yet to join the WTO, but the accession process is almost on the getting into the final stage. The target is, according to the WTO and the Ministry of Trade in Ethiopia, the target is remain to be a full member by the 14th of the WTO Ministerial Conference in Yaoundé, Cameroon. That will be in March 2026. That will make Ethiopia the 167th member of the WTO and the 9th African state to join since 2020. The process is going really well. It involves, multilateral working party meetings with the technical review of legislation and commitments, as well as also bilateral market access negotiation with key members, like with the European Union, with like Turkey and US and other markets. But the challenge would be now is the time is very tight, the timeline. Now we are in October and March, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done in aligning the domestic laws as well as also some of the sensitive areas like agriculture and other sensitive, deemed to be sensitive areas needs to be still negotiated and discussed. But both the Ethiopian government as well as the WTO are aiming for full membership in March 2026.
Sure. Okay. Well, what would this actually mean? I mean, I remember back in the day, for the members, when we were doing these cases, I think that there was benefits for Ethiopia having its own legislation. There was they were able to, let's say, say, we have this legislation, you need to follow this legislation. We're not yet a member. You need to adhere to our local law when you want to trade here. And then having legislation in, now being reformed, doing that ascension, there will be perhaps more interest for investors because they can escalate to the WTO. Which harmonizes Ethiopia much more. But it as well, it harmonizes it, but it gives it less autonomy slightly. How do you see this pros and cons in both directions, actually, I think, from a legislative perspective? And how has this legislation been, harmonized a bit?
Yeah. How it's harmonized? Yes, Ethiopia has been trying to harmonize its law, its trade law, basically, comes to customs law and tax law, trying to make sure that it's harmonized with the WTO agreements, such as the valuation agreement, such as the GATT Article 3 of the national treatment agreement, and the technical barriers to trade agreements. All those areas Ethiopia is trying to structure it and mirror it and try to incorporate all those agreements into its domestic laws. The reason is because, without that adjustment, it would be very difficult to, for Ethiopia to accept into the WTO. And as you know that there is pros and cons, as you mentioned. One of the pros is it will give Ethiopia, a most favored nation advantage, which means that when Ethiopia joins into the WTO, or as you heard it, if Ethiopia joins, it will be 167th country. So majority of the countries in the world are now a member of WTO. So that means that Ethiopia will have access to those markets from a most favored nation point of view, which means we'll have market access will be easier to any country that is a member of WTO. That is for trading goods, but as well as also trade in service. Another importance is will make Ethiopia also a more attractive place for investors, because it harmonizes with what is required to be getting to the WTO, as well as also I mentioned earlier the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that mirrors the architecture of the WTO in terms of its structure when it comes to trading goods agreement. What it does is it adds confidence to whoever wants to come to Ethiopia that they will find at least harmonized regulations, harmonized laws, as well as expects that the structural shift that happens. That is one of the benefits of joining the WTO. It will have that harmonization. On the other hand, as you said, yes, it will open the market, which means that the local industries will not be any more protective. You cannot have a national treatment, which means you cannot give preferential treatment for the domestic trader versus or against the foreign trader. You can't do that, and the WTO. So that means that protecting the traders locally will be a bit challenging and difficult. So that's one of the disadvantage, I would say. However, we cannot be in an island forever. We have to integrate regionally and then also integrate globally. And the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is the one that came first, that we ratified it, which is really giving us access to 54 African countries, that market. And if you look at the way it's structured, the arguments, it's, as I said, it mirrors the WTO. So which means it's easier now to adopt and to go to the next one, even in a multilateral level. So yeah, there is always pros and cons. It gives market access, but at the same time also it gives more access for others to come and benefit, and protectionism will not be in existence that much going forward. But that will depend on how the WTO will be going forward, because as we see at the moment, the protectionism is happening starting from the US, mainly in the US, and there is retaliatory measures have been taken. All those are very protective measures. So unless we adhere to multilateralism and adhere to multilateralism, rules and regulations and adhere to them, then having or being in a WTO might not be of much of a benefit. I know it sounds politics, but that's what's exactly happening at the moment. Yeah, so in a nutshell, or in a summary, the benefit will be structural adjustment and having the access to a global market through MFN and so on, and then also on the other side, if we refer it as a negative aspect of it, would be as we cannot continue to be more protective of the domestic, market or trader going forward.
I think that's really, really good to see. I mean, all of these elements, and I think if we think about it, I mean, as an African nation that was so almost independent, right? Independent in the way that they were operating, independent in the way that they were working collaboratively. And I think the fact that they did the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, if they did that and they felt safe, they felt great going into a global world and integrating, it sounds very, very reasonable and good, hopefully, for the country, as long as there's no exploitation happening.
Yeah. No, it's the accession program of WTO for Ethiopia. It's been for a long time, even before the whole African Continental Free Trade Agreement accession process, before it even started. But I think what I wanted to say is it gives Ethiopia the platform of, preparing its domestic laws, also preparing itself, negotiating with African countries on tariff and other non-tariff barriers and so on, give more, wealthy experience, and also, opening up what are the industries that we can still protect sectors and open the rest. It gave that exercise and practice. And now, going in full force of the accession process, they can bring that experience, that learning points, and put it forward when it comes to the in a multilateral stage. So that is where the key benefits. Yes, I think at the end of the day, you've used the word not exploited. The exploitation part comes in if you are not prepared to locally empower, the traders in terms of collaborating with foreign traders and so on. If you don't train them, that would be where the exploitation comes in. But I want to see more on the opportunity side, because as we often talk, even in other emerging markets where multinational companies coming in, those countries that are under the WTO, often it all depends on their strategy, how they want to enter into that country, and how they wanted to work with the locals, and how they wanted to get in with locals and venture into businesses and so on, will really shows how much they will succeed or not. So it's one thing from a multilateral point of view and so on, but it's another thing how these open markets are going to be utilized by other countries, by other companies that are from North Ethiopia. So I would actually argue that it would be good to work with domestic partners and so on in order to navigate the trade field here in Ethiopia and be successful on that aspect. So yeah, there's opportunities always, and there's also, of course, some sort of disadvantage that exists when you open in any given time in any given country. There's always some sort of maybe disadvantage, but the bigger picture is what do we do from our perspective in terms of being self-reliance in producing what we need for ourselves, and also making sure that producing for the globe. Because if we produce it locally and if it's cheaper, even if you bring it from abroad, it's competitive price, right? The consumer will pick competitively what is good for them, and so that is also good from a consumer welfare point of view, I would say.
So if we look at this, ultimately, these reforms, the way I understand it generally, is these reforms and these harmonizations will make sense and will really benefit the market if both the public and the private sector are able and knowledgeable on the implementation of such things. Now, given that these reforms are quite new and a lot has happened in such a short period of time, I almost dare to ask, what do you think is the probability of implementability of the law and adherence to it practically? So, meaning, if we don't really consider, policy. Policy is one thing, law is another, and then we look at operations, and operations really come into effect, and efficacy of the law is if all parties follow it. They follow, the customs officers follow the law that they have agreed to follow. The industry follows the law. The practitioners, the operators follow the law. What is your experience practically? I mean, do you think Ethiopia is ready for that shift?
Yeah, I think you're really asking very vital and core importance question. Yes, it's one thing to have the law, it's one thing to have that architecture, it's the foundational work, but it is another thing of implementing it. This is not only a challenge for Ethiopia, we've seen it in all countries we operated in, even though they are a member of a lot of regional and multilateral institutions, still implementing their laws and regulations and their responsibilities is always something to look into. Yes, when it comes to Ethiopia, I think in the implementation process is still a long way to go. I would say it's because of some of the challenges that this reform is facing, starting from institutional and capacity deficits in terms of having a well trained staff that understand from not on the top, usually on the top level, there's no issue, but you need to really take it down to the bottom, and not only on the big ports or in the capital, but also in all countries where customs operate. When you look at that aspect in terms of having a trained personnel, and even from a number points, they're understaffed at times. So that's one challenge. But another challenge is also, as it is in many other emerging markets, is the poor interagency coordination between, like, for example, customs and maybe trade, Ministry of Trade, and also maybe, let's say, Ministry of Innovation and so on, because you want to import something like, let's say, high-tech equipment, the pre-import license will be provided by one institution, and another license will be provided by, and then the clearing is customs, because customs is going to execute that anyways. So if they're not interconnected, and if they're not reading from the same page, it would really have delay the implementation process, even though all are operating on their own, thinking that they are implementing it. But if you're not, if they are not coordinated, then it will delay the whole implementation process. And another one is, and this is also key, is corruption and rent-seeking mentality, where try to get what they need or require by the traders in order for them to get it, asking for bribes, asking for some favors here and there, whether it's in terms of paying actual money or in kind. That is still also a challenge for the implementation process. And as well as also, I would say, skill gap in terms of understanding. The one that I was trying to talk about is being understaffed, but also the ones that are there, are they really trained on these new laws, on these new regulations, and would they be comfortable to implement it, or are they really want to by default going back to the legacy way of working? Is that easier for them to go rather than electronically filing and all that, or you go on paper and so on? That takes time, and that's another challenge. And another one is still, we mentioned earlier that even though Ethiopia in the law clearly states that a custom officer cannot really, without providing a written justification, can uplift a value of a product, and then subjectively cannot introduce a new value for a product without an evidence, and also should follow the WTO customs valuation argument, because it's already been incorporated on the national law. Still, you see discretionary uplift exist, and that really leads to more appeals, more what do you call it, like a bureaucratic procedure to follow in order to get to the right valuation. That takes time, that takes resource, and really delays that implementation process because of not following the rule to the letter. Another one is also sometimes, this is also what we've seen in other markets. There's the law, the regulation is out there, but then there are some directives, right? They're not published. They're there in the wall of like a government office, and then people are not know, they don't know about it. So when you go there with all your documents ready, but something has changed and you're not being notified, so that frequent and announced changes will really also a challenge by itself, even though the architectural aspect, the structural aspect has been sorted, but the implementation, where some of the directives that are used to implement those regulations are not in line with what is stated, and so that unannounced change, frequent changes also would delay the implementation process. So yeah, but this is the challenging aspect of it. But having, for example, if we talk about the single window, right, having it will definitely demonstrate improved trade efficiency. It will save time, costs, and resources. But the rollout is having some challenge sometimes because of internet connectivity in rural areas, and full adoption of that system also takes time because of lack of skills among users, also not only from an official point, but also some people tend to go into the legacy, system that they used to use. So those are the challenges. But yeah, but these are not unique to Ethiopia. These are challenges that exist in many of emerging markets, and but in order to make the country more competitive, in order to make the country more to become a regional and then a global player, these are the areas that needs to be addressed, and make sure that the right skills and the right training are transferred to the civil servant, but at the same time also to the to traders who would always go and face such challenges if they're well empowered and understand what's their rights and what's their responsibility, not only rights, then they go halfway to help the official also to empower the official also that is the case, and then the official will probably understand, be educated, and also be empowered. So the responsibility does not only rely on the government, I would say, but also on civic societies, the Chamber of Commerce, and also the traders themselves, in order to make sure that this is implemented here.
Yeah, I think based on what you're saying here is the onus lies on all of us as a society, right? I mean, it's almost as if every single party playing a part in this trade transaction and lane needs to learn to play their role. So ultimately, if you look at it from what you're saying is, okay, it will be the international manufacturer's responsibility to understand the new policy, the new reforms, the new implementations. It would be the government officials' responsibility to understand the new reforms, the new applications, and really, really drill down to it, be up to date, right? But then it seems that it's not just, it doesn't really stop there. It's the broker, it's the logistics agent, it's the buyer of the goods, it's the reseller, it's the importer. All of these parties really need to understand their role, the knowledge, and so forth. And then all of the parties almost have to be aware of the new change, what you're saying, but there's this element of they also need to be aware of the what you said, what was the legacy process, so that they can know when the parties are like kind of pivoting to the legacy process, that they can say, no, sheesh, what are you doing now? So they could say, I see where you're going here. This was our old process. Almost everybody has to be aware this is old, this is new, and encourage each other to stay on the new path. And then it almost seems like, then comes that additional element of staying up to date on all these directives that is coming, and really having a strong local relationship with your local partners from an international perspective, because these things are not published. And then, of course, all the parties have to be committed to say no to corruption, because otherwise that path will stay existing. If everybody says no, the path will dry down completely. So it seems for me that as Ethiopia's trailblazing and really creating new opportunities that is in alignment with international practices, the onus will lie on every single party, international and local, governmental, public and private, really every single party needs to play their role to drive change together in Ethiopia so that everybody can benefit together.
Exactly. It's really, you summarized it really wonderfully. There's as I said earlier, the opportunity is immense, right? The benefits really is greater than the risk and the challenge in this country. But as you said, in order to reap that fruit, everyone needs to work together, every stakeholder, right, in their mandate. They really need to laser focused and disciplined in implementing the laws and the regulations, and not only thinking from now perspective, but also looking at from a regional point as well as globally, where are things going, and then how can we really drive the country towards sustainable growth, sustainable development. And that will not come, as we always say in Blue Blocks, through aid. It only happens through trade. So in order for trade to work, it's not easy, as we also say in Blue Blocks, business should be easy, but it's not. But what we need to do is, if everyone puts their hands together, right? Ubuntu spirit and the Harambee spirit from East Africa, it comes together and work together. The government, the private sectors, the multinational companies and international institutions, and also the trader locally, right? The importer, the investor, and all that. If they work together to maximize their own benefit, then this reform will have legs, and then it will start running long distance, as our athletes are known for breaking records in marathons, and hopefully we will break records and more in cross-border trade, I would say.
That sounds excellent. Thank you so much, Beka, for joining us again today on Let's Talk Trade. It has been amazing having you here, and I truly hope that Ethiopia will really continue to set new standards, put on its running shoes, and break records in the world of cross-border trade. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Wish you a lovely day. Goodbye.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.